All right, 10 ways you are messing up your press and how to fix them. Numbers 1 and 2, let's start with the stance. Number 1, don't take a stance that is too narrow. So when you unrack the bar, take a stance that is relatively wide. It's gonna be roughly your squat width stance, or you can go a little wider than that. Error number 2, not an error, probably more just a personal preference, it's certainly more efficient. Don't back out a long ways from the rack. So when you back out from the rack, you don't need to back way up to here. All it needs to be is a very short half step, or small step. So after you take your grip on the bar, you unrack it, half step, and then you're good to go. You don't need to go any further than that. Errors number 3, 4, and 5. They're gonna have to do with your grip, your wrists, your elbows. Number 3, don't take a wide grip on the press. It is not going to be your bench press grip. It is going to be a narrower grip than that. Most guys, it's going to be a grip that's basically, straight ahead, okay? So you are Frankenstein's monster approaching the bar. So most guys, you're gonna be right on the edge of the knurl, maybe a finger width into the knurl. Gals are going to be a little bit narrower than that, maybe a finger width, or maybe a finger on the smooth, maybe even 2 fingers on the smooth. But roughly speaking, that's going to be your grip width. Number 4, I guess, having your elbows behind the bar. So when you unrack the bar, you don't want your elbows back here. Really good chance you're going to launch that bar forward. That is not going to be a good position to be in. Instead, when you unrack the bar, you want your elbows slightly in front of the bar. Your forearms are going to make a nice up and back arrow. And in fact, that's where you're going to think about aiming, right? And now this error, having elbows behind the bar, is very closely tied to error number 5, which is having your wrists bend back in crazy extension. They're not going to be totally straight. There's going to be about 10 to 15 degrees of extension. That's what you're looking for, so that you can have the bar sitting over the base of the palm. So when you take your grip, we talk about pronating the grip, but it's not this huge rotation, or at least that's not the point. The point of that rotation is simply to get the base of your palm, basically the bones of your forearm, lined up, so that's where you're pushing on the bar. This, with my wrist bending backwards like that, you can see it bending backwards like that, that's a real weak position. So get set up so that the base of your palm is pushing on the bar. Dip down far enough so that your elbows are slightly in front of the bar, and then stand the bar up. Now, from this time until I do my first rep, I should not have to move anything from my waist on up. I'm ready to press right here. Error number 6, having a wonky focal point, or simply just not having a focal point at all. The press, as you probably know if you've been doing it for any length of time, is very balanced, very bar path dependent. So when you press, simply pick a spot. A spot's gonna be better. Pick a spot straight ahead. We're not taking that one out, folks. Pick a spot straight ahead of you on the wall. Look at that point the entire time. Stare at it during the setup, stare at it during the rep, stare at it all the way through every single rep, even until you rack the bar at the end of the set. Keep that focal point in one spot. Keep staring at it, keep your eyes open. Errors 7 and 8, both have to do with the hips and what the heck we are doing with the hips when we press. For starters, you gotta get the timing of the press right, the timing of the hips right. So sometimes you'll see somebody, they're learning how to do the press, this might be you, and they're going to use the hips and press at the same exact time. So the movement is gonna look something like this. All right, that makes for a very difficult press. It should be hips, then press. So this is the cue, hips, then press, and it will look like this. If that doesn't help, remind yourself that the bar should go down before it goes up. So when your hips move, the bar goes down. So that'll help out with the timing of the hips. I think we're on number 8. Make sure that your hips are gonna move forward, not you throwing your shoulders back. You will notice the difference in where you feel the weight on your feet. If you do it correctly, you will feel your weight shift momentarily to the balls of your feet. If you do it incorrectly, if you throw your shoulders back, you will instead feel your weight shift momentarily to your heels. That's no good. Allow your weight to shift momentarily forward when you reach forward with your hips. Error number 9, allowing your knees to bend when you're pressing. Remember, this is not the push press. Push press is a great lift, just not the lift that we're doing. So if your knees bend when you're pressing, the rep no longer counts. So this is a rep right here that does not count. So I'm going to reach forward with my hips, but I'm going to let my knees get loose. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, but you want to keep them straight. So give yourself, flex your quads, or tight knees, or even, a little bit of an overcue here, keep your knees back, and it should look like this instead. So keep your knees straight, make sure it counts. Error number 10, having a wonky bar path. You want a path that is as vertical as possible, as close to the middle of your foot as possible. This is true for the squat, this is true for the deadlift. It is especially true for the press and the Olympic lifts, like the snatch, the clean, the jerk. The press especially because it starts so far away from your balance point, that is to say the middle of your foot, and it finishes even farther away. So if you've got a press rep that's going to go forward on you, you're going to notice it in a real big hurry. So if I launch this thing forward, that is a much harder rep than it should be, as opposed to if I tell myself to aim for my nose or throw it back. So those are two cues that you can use in that situation. If you notice yourself kind of pressing in a looped fashion, and remember, you need to have your elbows, we talked about this earlier, in the right position. Your forearm should be creating that kind of up and back angle. But if you find yourself still pressing it forward, try aim for your nose or throw it back. As always, we hope this helps you get stronger and live better.